welcome back to CIA Declassified. The year is 1965. The Cold War has shifted its gaze from the streets of Berlin to the desolate high-altitude plateaus of Central Asia. Communist China has just detonated its first atomic bomb at Lop Nor, and the American intelligence community is in a blind panic. They need to know the telemetry of China's new missiles, but traditional reconnaissance is failing. The high-altitude winds and jagged peaks of the Karakoram and Himalayan ranges made standard aerial photography nearly impossible to execute with the frequency required to track a rapidly advancing nuclear program. The Board of National Estimates was sounding the alarm. The Dragon was breathing fire, and the U.S. was functionally deaf to the roar. The solution, a joint operation between the CIA and the Indian Intelligence Bureau to place an automated listening post where no human could ever survive for long. The summit of Nanda Devi. This wasn't just a climbing expedition, it was a desperate gamble against the laws of physics and the cruelty of the elements. To keep a high-powered sensor running in sub-zero temperatures for years without maintenance, the agency couldn't rely on chemical batteries that would freeze or solar panels that would be buried in the snow. They needed something eternal, a source of power that generated its own heat and required no sun. They needed the SNAP 19C, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, a nuclear battery fueled by the decay of plutonium. This mission, hidden under the guise of high-altitude research, would test the absolute threshold of human lung capacity and technological miniaturization. They were going to plant a nuclear seed in the ice, hoping it would grow into a harvest of signals, turning the roof of the world into a massive radioactive antenna. Every step taken by the climbers was a step into a scientific unknown, carrying the weight of a nuclear core through air so thin it barely supported life. They were betting that the silence of the mountains would prove the loudest intelligence of the century. This is the era of Project KRYPTON. How did this mission earn its designation? The reason for the name Project KRYPTON lies in the specific radiological signature and the noble gas association used by the Office of Electronic Intelligence. In the mid-1960s, the agency utilized a naming convention for sensing projects based on elements and noble gases to signify inertness and hidden presence. Krypton, derived from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden, was selected because the project's sensors were designed to be noble, unreactive, and undetectable to the Chinese radio frequency sweeps. It was a literal descriptor of the agency's intent to remain hidden in plain sight, a silent ghost in the machine of the Himalayas, gathering data without ever interacting with the environment it haunted. Let's pull back the curtain on the raw data of this radioactive trespass. The mission was a collaboration between the CIA and the Indian Intelligence Bureau, led by Captain M.S. Kohli, a legendary Indian mountaineer. The core of the device was a SNAP 19C generator containing 7 plutonium capsules weighing roughly 57 kilograms. In October 1965, the team was forced to abandon the device at Camp 4, approximately 2,000 feet below the summit of Nana Devi, due to a catastrophic blizzard. When recovery teams returned in the spring of 1966, the entire ice sledge and the nuclear generator had vanished, likely swept away by an avalanche. The amount of plutonium lost was nearly 1/3 of the total amount used in the atomic bomb dropped at Nagasaki. Logs confirm that American climber Jim McCarthy was specifically trained by the Atomic Energy Commission to handle the radioactive fuel rods. Declassified cables show that President Jimmy Carter and Indian Prime Minister Morarji Desai Morarji Desai, worked in secret to suppress the story when it first leaked in 1978. The project utilized a cover story that the climbers were part of a high-altitude flight research program for the Air Force. Records prove the agency conducted search missions using specialized helicopter-mounted radiation detectors for 3 years following the loss. The SNAP 19C generator was designed to provide a continuous power output of 30 watts for up to 900 years. Documentation shows that a second successful device was installed on Nandakot in 1967, though it later malfunctioned and melted into the ice. The agency paid the Sherpas and climbers $1,000 a month, an astronomical sum in 1965, to ensure their silence and cooperation. Internal CIA memos admit that the loss of the plutonium capsules created a severe radiological risk to the headwaters of the Ganges River. The project relied on line-of-sight physics, needing the peak's elevation to see over the horizon into the Chinese testing grounds. Reports reveal that the Indian government initially suspected the CIA of pocketing the device to test its effects on Indian soil. Records show that the mountaineers had to carry the generator in specially shielded backpacks to minimize their own radiation exposure. The fuel used was plutonium-238, which has a half-life of 87.7 years, ensuring the device stays hot for centuries. CIA pilots flew U-2 missions over the search site to photograph changes in the glacier's topography. The Indian government officially banned all climbing expeditions in Nana Devi in 1974 to prevent civilians from stumbling upon the plutonium. Sensors designed for the project had to be tested in the cold chambers of the Technical Services Division to ensure transistors wouldn't crack at negative 60 degrees. The team utilized encrypted burst transmitters to relay mountaineering progress back to a base in New Delhi. The search for the lost device in 1967 utilized a magnetic anomaly detector typically used for finding submarines. Water samples from the Rishi-Ganga River have been periodically tested for alpha particle contamination for over 50 years. The original shipping containers for the plutonium were marked as radio relay parts to bypass customs scrutiny. The agency utilized a false summit landing pad for helicopter logistics during the 1967 follow-up mission. The plutonium capsules were encased in graphite blocks to prevent them from melting through the transport cases. The CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence calculated the melting rate of the glacier to predict where the generator might eventually emerge. Indian intelligence agents were embedded in the climbing team to monitor the American scientists' every move. The mission necessitated the creation of oxygen-efficient survival gear that was years ahead of commercial mountaineering equipment. The long-range relay station for the project was located at Charbatia Air Base in India. The SNAP 19C was chosen specifically because its solid-state thermocouples had no moving parts to freeze or jam. A 2005 expedition reported finding high-strength alloy fragments near the 1965 base camp, though their origin remains unconfirmed. The mission was codenamed Operation Himalaya in initial joint planning documents before the KRYPTON designation was finalized. The agency used Geiger-Muller counters disguised as standard mountaineering altimeters. To maintain the cover, the climbers were required to keep detailed weather logs to present to the Indian press if questioned. The radio relay package was designed to intercept telemetry from the SS-2 Chinese missile test. The agency utilized thermoluminescent dosimeters to track the cumulative radiation dose of the climbers. Records show the Office of Electronic Intelligence developed an algorithm to filter out Himalayan background noise from Chinese missile telemetry. Reports confirm that the Indian Prime Minister's office requested a decontamination plan for the valley as early as 1968. The generator's containment vessel was tested against a terminal velocity impact scenario to simulate a fall from a summit. The project consulted with experts from the Baba Atomic Research Center to assess leaching risk. Logs prove that the CIA recovery team was kept on standby at Nainital for the duration of the 1966 spring window. The agency designed the sensor's antenna to resemble local rock formations to prevent visual detection. Declassified documents reveal the CIA used satellite heat mapping to search for the SNAP 19C's thermal signature. The project employed seismic activity sensors to distinguish between avalanches and underground nuclear explosions. Internal records show the agency experimented with aerosolized markers to track glacial flow where the device was lost. Documentation proves the use of encrypted teleprinter links between Nana Devi Base Camp and Langley. The agency developed low-temperature lubricants specifically for the mechanical deployment arms of the sensor array. Records confirm that the SNAP 19C fuel capsules were designed to survive an entry-level burnup in case of transport plane crash. The mission utilized remote trigger firing squibs to destroy the sensor's memory banks if the site was compromised. Documentation shows the agency analyzed the snow acidity on Nanda Devi to predict corrosion rates of the aluminum casing. The project created the first high-altitude radio propagation maps of the Himalayan range. Records show that the mission climbers underwent pressure chamber conditioning at an Air Force base before deployment. Reports indicate the CIA used acoustic triangulation to narrow down the possible location of the generator after the avalanche. A quote from a declassified field interview dated 1967, "The generator was a source of warmth in a place where cold is the only reality, but it was a warmth that could kill us just as easily as the ice." Quote from Director Helms, "If the device has indeed been carried into the Rishi Ganga, I can't pronounce it, Rishiganga, it's a river, the political fallout will be as dangerous as the radiological leakage," end quote. A quote from a declassified progress report from the Office of Electrical Intelligence, "We are operating at the very edge of what the human body can endure and what our technology can sustain," end quote. A quote from the State Department in a declassified cable dated 1978, "The loss of the SNAP unit is a major embarrassment, but its recovery is now a matter of national security and environmental preservation." And a declassified quote from the final report, "The mountains are not a laboratory, they are an adversary that does not return what it takes." The files for Project KRYPTON remain some of the most guarded in the CIA's Special Collections Archive. The most significant erasures, totaling over 450 pages, are found in the Environmental Impact Assessment and the Post-Avalanche Telemetry Log sections. The official reason for these redactions is Statutory Exemption 10 CFR Part 810, which prevents the disclosure of nuclear-related technologies that could be used for proliferation. Then there's the dirty seed theory. This is a digital whisper that refuses to die. It's the idea that the redacted pages hide the fact that the generator didn't just fall, it was a radiological mine. Some suggest the CIA intentionally left the device in a precarious position to ensure that if Chinese troops ever occupied the peak, they would be subjected to lethal levels of radiation. In this version of the story, the lost device is a purposeful piece of radioactive denial of service tradecraft. Then there's the glacial ghost transmission theory. It's another chilling one, and it focuses on the missing telemetry logs. Speculators argue that the device wasn't actually lost in an avalanche, but sank through the ice and continued to transmit from inside the glacier for decades. They believe the blacked out pages contain data the device gathered from deep within the Himalayan crust, including seismic signatures of underground Chinese nuclear tests that the US government still refuses to acknowledge to avoid a diplomatic crisis. Then there's the Pakistani heist legend. Some fringe analysts believe the redactions cover up a third-party theft that would be the ultimate embarrassment. The theory suggests that a clandestine Pakistani commando unit tipped off by a double agent successfully recovered the plutonium capsules before the CIA could return in the spring. This would mean the lost device story is a 60-year-old cover for one of the greatest intelligence failures in history, the accidental arming of a rival nuclear program with CIA-provided fuel. Then there's the deep freeze mutation conspiracy. Perhaps the most bizarre speculation is that the redactions hide biological sampling data. Some theorists believe the agency was monitoring the effects of the leaking plutonium on local Himalayan flora and fauna to study radiological adaptation. They suggest the missing pages contain descriptions of mutated organisms found in the valley, and that the climbing ban isn't to protect people from the plutonium, but to protect a living laboratory from public discovery. Then there's the Yeti isotope myth, my personal favorite. It's in the stranger corners of the rumor mill. There is talk of a white-haired guardian. Some theorists argue that the redactions hide evidence that a local biological entity encountered the device while it was still at Camp 4. They suggest the blacked-out pages detail radioactive tracks found in the snow that don't match any known animal or human climber, leading to a theory that the device was moved or taken by something that considers the high peaks its territory. Was Project KRYPTON a success? Tactically, it was a catastrophic failure. The primary objective of establishing a long-term listening post on Nana Devi was never achieved, and the loss of a significant amount of plutonium created a lingering environmental threat. Strategically, it was a geopolitical landmine. The mission strained U.S.-Indian relations and caused a public outcry that lasted for decades. Ultimately, it was a success because it catalyzed the development of autonomous power systems. The failure forced the agency to rethink how it deployed remote assets, leading to the creation of more robust, failure-proof sensors. While the nuclear seed never sprouted on the mountain, the data gathered during the attempt provided crucial insights into high-altitude operations that were later used in the war in Afghanistan. It successfully demonstrated that the CIA could operate with foreign intelligence services on ultra-sensitive missions, even if the physical outcome was a disaster. The success is measured in the lessons of what not to do when playing God with nuclear isotopes in the wilderness. It was a failure of hardware, but a success in defining the risk tolerance for modern clandestine tech deployments. The mission also successfully identified the Sino-Indian border's most vulnerable signal leakage points, which are still monitored today via satellite. Furthermore, it proved that the Technical Services Division could engineer devices capable of surviving the most hostile environments on Earth, even if the logistics of placement remained flawed. Finally, it established a precedent for nuclear intelligence gathering that shifted the focus towards orbital platforms. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the power and presence of Project KRYPTON resulted in breakthroughs that define modern tech, such as radioisotope thermoelectric generators, RTGs. The miniaturization of the SNAP-19C led directly to the RTGs used to power the Voyager probes and the Mars rovers. Today, this technology allows us to explore the outer reaches of the solar system where sunlight is too weak for solar panels. Remote sensing miniaturization. The project required sensors to be rugged enough for the Himalayas but light enough for a human to carry. This paved the way for the Internet of Things environmental sensors used today to monitor climate change in remote polar regions. High-altitude human factors data. The physiological data gathered from the climbers who operated at 25,000 feet without supplemental oxygen for long periods is still used in aviation medicine and for training elite high-altitude mountaineers and special forces. Thermal management in extreme cold. The techniques used to keep the sensitive electronics from freezing, utilizing the waste heat from the nuclear core, are now standard in subarctic engineering for oil and gas pipelines. Project KRYPTON is a haunting reminder that in the search for secrets, we often leave behind scars that never heal. The nuclear battery is still out there, ticking away in the dark, a heart of a star buried in a tomb of ice. It remains a testament to an era where the fear of an enemy was so great that we were willing to gamble with the purity of a sacred river. We are still listening for the signals from the mountain, but the mountain has a way of keeping its own secrets. The silence is no longer empty. It is radioactive. The lessons of this project ensure that today we look to the stars for power rather than burying it in our own soil. The ghost of the CIA's nuclear seeds still whisper to the glaciers, waiting for the spring that finally reveals the truth. The mountain has become a silent monument to the lengths the agency would go to secure the horizon. We may never recover the plutonium, but we have certainly recovered the knowledge that some secrets are too heavy to carry. The radioactive legacy of this project serves as a permanent invisible marker of the Cold War's reach into the most pristine places on the planet. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes on the horizon and your sensors sharp. And remember, some power sources never truly turn off. Join us next time as we examine Project P1 interrogations. In the darkest corners of MK Delta, the CIA experimented with a chemical bridge between sleep and truth. We'll uncover the facts behind the use of Meritran, the revival drug designed to turn a sleeping subject into a hyper-talkative witness. It was a war of words and wakefulness. Join us next time for The Dreaming Witness. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.